Welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Scoop podcast with Sam and Jordan. Today we're doing the third episode in Sam's basketball bracket, and today's portion of the bracket will be around the drama sector.
Drama region.
The drama region.
Yeah, so this is 16 more basketball movies. So with the drama movies, it's like a lot of them obviously are more about the drama of the story and the characters and less about actual basketball play. So the movies that I liked most were either obviously good movies or just had more basketball to it. There's pretty much really just 2 of these 16 movies that I think could win the region, but we'll talk through it. The first matchup is Love and Basketball from 2000 by Gina Prince Bythewood. Sorry.
You sound super sure of yourself.
And so Love and Basketball versus High School Musical from 2006, the Disney Channel original movie. So yeah, High School Musical, we talked on the first episode where it beat the double teamed movie from also Disney Channel. And I briefly rewatched some of the scenes today for this podcast. And yeah, it's obviously a lot more music than basketball. There's like 2 actual basketball scenes, but they do have an actual song and choreographed dance with basketball, which is interesting. I would say it's probably the most popular or potentially the best Disney Channel movie they've ever made. It was
I would say so.
So 2006 was like, I was 14. This was kind of like the end of my childhood when this movie came out because I didn't really watch it or like it when it came out.
I feel like people our age, this was the last DCOM they actually like stayed up for and like watched before they were like, oh, Disney Channel's not cool anymore. Like we're like you said, we're not kids.
Yeah, it's like the last millennial DCOM movie.
Honestly, I think that's why it's so like culturally iconic.
But another little tidbit about this movie, I remember I was in 10th grade in my U.S. history class, and my teacher, it was like the last week of the year, and we were just watching movies, and she was like openly like, oh, I love the High School Musical movie with that Zac Efron. And so she put it on. This was 2 years after it came out, and I was 16 years old, and it was like super cringeworthy, and everyone was like, what are we doing?
When now I feel like it has returned to being cool. Like,
yeah, I think in retrospect, it's definitely the best of all the cringy DCOM movies.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's not as good as Love and Basketball, which we'll talk more about later. So this will be the end of High School Musical's run. So the next matchup is High Flying Bird from 2019 by Steven Soderbergh and Boogie from 2021 by Eddie Wong. So Boogie was kind of boring. I didn't really get into it because it's just like this guy who's in high school and just trying to make the team. He's not really that good. And then he talks about trying to be in the NBA. It does have Taylor Page in it, and she's good, but I'm going to have High Flying Bird advance to the next round, and I'll talk about that one. So the next matchup, I'm going to go a little quick, because most of these aren't that good, and the drama stories of some of them I think are funny to get into, but the next matchup is Just Wright from 2010, starring Queen Latifah and Common. And it's going to win in the first round because the movie it's going up against is One on One from 1977, which was not good. This is one of the earlier basketball movies, kind of a rom-com, a romance drama. It stars Robbie Benson, who's the voice of Beast in the animated Beauty and the Beast movie, which is really random. The first 10 minutes were actually okay. There's like an actual theme song, which was pretty good. And there's like some long driving sequences that were reminiscing of Drive My Car. And then he's like driving to his college and he picks up a hitchhiker, and it's a young Melanie Griffith, who was in Body Double we watched this year. And she like demands his cash and like leaves his car, and then like is never comes back for the movie, so that was kind of a letdown. But then he ends up with this Annette O'Toole actress who was in the 1990s version of It. And it's just really kind of bland, and it doesn't go anywhere. I thought it was funny because there's this one part where they're like in Annette O'Toole's dorm and they're talking, and she's like upset that some of the other boy basketball players were like making fun of the girls or something, and she referenced them as animals. And this is 1977, so this is 4 years before The Elephant Man, but I swear the voice of Beauty and the Beast says, he's like sitting on the bed and they're talking in the dorm, and she like references all them boys basketball players as animals, and he just says, "Hey, I'm not an animal." And he just talks like that. He's not really yelling, but he's like more stern. And immediately I was like, wait a second, that's from Elephant Man that we just watched recently. And so I thought that was really funny, but it was really a bad movie. He's actually decent at basketball. I was going to give it like 2 stars, but then the movie's called 101. So I was like, I'll give it 1 star because it's titled One twice. So that is going to lose to Just Right, which I'll talk about coming up. The next matchup is O versus Annie O. So O is short for Othello, the Shakespeare story. This is from 2001 by actor-director Tim Blake Nelson. And it's basically these high school prep kids, and Julia Stiles is in it. And the main character's name is Odin, so it's like his nickname is O, like the title. And she's like dating him, and he's like the only African American on the team, and like there's like some racist white students against their relationship. And I think it's Josh Hartnett is the other guy who's trying to be with Julia Stiles, and he like tricks Odin into thinking Julia Stiles is cheating on him or cheating against him, and he like just gets super mad and like becomes obsessed with the idea that he's getting cheated on, and he literally chokes her and kills her. Spoiler alert. And then like he's like enraged, and then immediately afterwards he finds out that the guy was lying, and he confesses that he lied, and like, why did you kill Julia Stiles? And the guy like loses it, and then he gets shot and dies, and that's like the movie. And I was
so like, it's a retelling of
yeah,
okay.
And I haven't really seen any other adaptations of Othello, so I couldn't tell you exactly how the story goes, but in the basketball context, it wasn't that good. I mean, there's a scene where it's like a dunk contest, and he dunks it, and it shatters the backboard, which is pretty cool. But the last half hour of the movie is super sad and like a letdown and unwatchable. So it's going to lose to Annie O. Annie O is a TV movie from 1996. I'll talk about in a little bit. So the next matchup are 2 movies that you saw with me, so you can give your input. So we have Harvard Man from 2001 versus The Basketball Diaries from 1995, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. So which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, is the reason that they're matched up because they're specifically like collegiate, like Ivy League types doing basketball? Was that or is this just kind of random?
It's a little random, and it's also they were both drama movies that were kind of like high school, college, Northeast type.
Yeah, I think that's what I meant, like New England.
Yeah.
Basketball, yeah. Because I forgot Basketball Diaries is like a lot of it's in high school. So yeah, we can talk about that one first. I feel like this movie like entered my brain and exited my brain so fast because it's just, I don't know. There's something that it like should like, it came out in the year 1995. It should have stayed in the 90s. Like it feels like you're watching something that shouldn't exist because it's like Leonardo DiCaprio at his most Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, he was literally such a child then.
Before the Titanic.
This is before the Titanic or before Titanic the movie?
The movie Titanic. And Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, but like I feel like this is the moment that maybe got Leo to like be recognized. And I will agree, there's like scenes of him. You know, spoiler alert, he basically is addicted to heroin And
it's a very sad story.
It's a super sad story, but it's also like just angst ridden and like kind of like eye rollable, and he's got kind of like a punchable face in the whole movie. I say that with the most like love in my heart for 90s Leo, because I had like a huge obsession with him.
He's just a total jerk the whole movie.
He's a
to
total
his
jerk.
Mom and his friends.
Yeah, but then like it's okay, like a movie we've seen recently that just depicted heroin addiction so much better. That movie Beautiful Boy with Timothée Chalamet, and like it had what's his name in it? From The Office. Steve Carell was his dad in that movie. And that was like a gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching look at like what addiction can do to a young boy. But I just feel like literally the only thing that carried this movie was Leo's performance. And the rest of it was just really cringy writing, really weird like scenarios that just kind of felt like there's no way this would happen. But allegedly this is based on someone's real life. It just feels
Jim Carroll.
It just feels like it would never actually happen, and it felt very like fan fiction-y, very like
it's very stylized to the point where it messed up with the tone of a sadder story.
Mm-hmm.
There's like an iconic part where they're like shirtless in the rain all playing basketball.
Love that.
But I also want to shout out Michael Imperioli.
Oh yeah,
who's in the wheelchair. He's like Leo's friend. And Juliette Lewis plays a role in this. She's really good. But yeah, the story it was sad, and then it wasn't interesting at a certain point, and then like I said, the tone gets really wonky with exactly how much basketball is also going to be played, but then like, because there's a line that's crossed multiple times where it's like he's going to do drugs, but then like he's going to betray his friends, and then, oh wait, now he's homeless, and now like, okay, well, there's no more basketball, and he's just like a druggie, and Ernie Hudson has to save him. But
there was a lot of times too where they would like be getting high, and then they'd be like, oh shoot, we got to go play basketball, and I'm like, y'all are not going to go play basketball.
There's zero instance where you could get that high from high school
Heroin?
basketball before you play and just start playing, like Mark Wahlberg shooting a free throw and he collapses, I believe.
Yes.
That was crazy.
Just a lot of like really silly stuff like that where I'm like, I would have been very impressed by this at the age of 16, but
I will say it's better than Harvard Man.
It's way better than Harvard Man.
A little backstory on Harvard Man. It's by James Toback, who hasn't really done that much else. Starring Sarah Michelle Gellar at one of her peak time periods. It also has Ray Allen, who was in He Got Game 3 years before this. He's in a smaller role in this movie. But Jordan can talk more about how the editing just like completely destroys it, because like they'll just be in the middle of a conversation and the editing like skips lines, and like it's very choppy, and you can't follow what they're saying.
We were watching a YouTube video earlier today that was talking about, there's a part in Taken 3 where it takes like 20 cut edits to show Liam Neeson climbing over one fence. And I didn't realize that until someone pointed it out, just how like incredibly cringeworthy that is, that you have to have 20 different cuts in one singular action. That is how I would describe the entirety of this movie.
But it's just boring conversations.
And it's boring conversations with unnecessary, like, it's almost like they had to feed them each line and then stop recording to then feed them the next line to then start recording again. That's literally how the movie is filmed.
It's like a post-production hell movie.
I mean, you can assume maybe it was in post-production, but there's some of it that feels like they just had one camera and then nobody knew their lines. Like, that's kind of how it felt. And then they weren't doing, like, everybody that acts in this movie is not doing a bad job. It's literally just the delivery of everything is just constantly, like, edit. And then, like, it was just very, very, like, off-putting to the point where I was like, this is nearly unwatchable.
And it's also one of those movies, and I'll get to a few more in this podcast, but it's one of those where basketball's like the second or third subplot to like everything else that's going on, and it's loses points to that. So both pretty bad movies. I think Basketball Diaries definitely has more to it and would advance in this matchup, if you agree.
Oh, I 100% agree.
So the next matchup is the Adam Sandler matchup. We have Uncut Gems 2019, which is mostly about gyms, jewelry, and an NBA sports betting. And you have real life Kevin Garnett and Uncut Gems. But we also have Hustle from 2022, where Adam Sandler plays a scout and goes overseas, and he scouts this player who played in the real NBA, Juancho Hernan-Gomez. But then you have Anthony Edwards, who's on the Timberwolves, who was really good at acting. He's really funny in this movie. I would rewatch it. I saw it when it came out. It's like one of those Netflix originals. It's not as good as Uncut Gems, which is kind of like anyone would say that, I would believe. But Hustle, I think, is a good movie. I gave it 3 stars. I might give it another half star if I watched it again. But just quintessential Adam Sandler. Like, if you like Adam Sandler, you'd probably like that movie. And then we'll talk more about Uncut Gems as we move on. But then we have 2 more first-round matchups, and then we'll take a short break. We have Hoosiers from 1986 versus Late Bloomers from 1996. And I did rewatch Hoosiers. I watched it maybe once or twice growing up. I never gravitated towards it as a kid or a teenager as much as I did, like, Remember the Titans and Rudy. I know those are football movies, but Hoosiers was always in the vernacular of sports movies from the 80s to 2000s when I was growing up. So I rewatched it. It's kind of boring, and I'll talk more about it because I still think it's a better movie than Late Bloomers, because Late Bloomers is a made-for-TV movie, and the last hour is basically just the drama and no basketball. So Late Bloomers is about a new high school basketball coach who's a lesbian, and she has a relationship with this high school secretary, and it's really just about their relationship. And at the end, they have a wedding, and it's like in a small town, and like there's a lot of bigoted people who are upset that she's coaching, and like one of the girls throws the basketball away and quits in the middle of a game, and that's like the last basketball scene. And then the last 40 plus minutes is just their relationship. So basketball wise, it wasn't that great. There was really not that much basketball, but I admire the story and what it was trying to tell. But again, it was a TV movie, and I think most people would say Hoosiers is better than Late Bloomers, but we'll get to Hoosiers later, because our final matchup in the first round in the drama region, we have Inside Moves from 1980 versus Heaven is a Playground from 1991. So Inside Moves is going to lose. This is the Richard Donner directed film right after he did the first Superman in 1978. This is a very weird story drama of like a sad, depressing man who you barely get to know before in the first 5-10 minutes. He tries to commit suicide, but he survives. And then, like, shortly thereafter, he meets with a bartender, and I forget if he gets a job with the bartender at a bar or if he's just friends with them, but the bartender eventually tries out for the Golden State Warriors, the NBA team, and he makes the team. And this is 1980s, which is like, or 1980 exactly, which is right when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson came in the NBA, and it got really popular and more competitive. But even in 1980, it's like the idea that you're a bartender and then you're just like, oh, I'm going to be in the NBA next week. Like that, it literally won't happen. And so it's really like 2 basketball scenes where like he's trying out for the Warriors, then he gets the job, or he gets on the team. And the last scene is this survival guy at the beginning going to his first game. And then he gets like a girlfriend, and I don't even honestly remember all that part because it was really bad and boring. But I just saw this today that his girlfriend in the movie, Diana Scarwood, was nominated for Best Supporting Actress at the Oscars. which is very interesting, but
For this movie?
yes, yeah. But ultimately, it's not as good as Heaven as a Playground, which we'll get to in the second round after this break.
We're back, and here are the second round matchups.
For the drama region. So, first off, we have Love and Basketball versus High Flying Bird. Then we have Just Wright versus Annie O. Then we have Uncut Gems versus the Basketball Diaries. And then it's Hoosiers versus Heaven as a Playground. So the first matchup in the second round, I'm going to say pretty easily Love and Basketball wins against High Flying Bird. So High Flying Bird, this one came out 2019. It's by Steven Soderbergh. It was shot entirely on an iPhone, so it's one of those movies where it's like interesting and it's good, but you can tell it's different. And time will tell if movies like this will stand the test of time, or there'll be like a niche thing with iPhones specifically. Anyway. So yeah, this came out 2019, and it's like a fictional NBA lockout, and it revolves around an agent and one NBA player. The agent is Andre Holland, and then Zazie Beetz is in it as kind of like his assistant. But there's two supporting performances I want to point out in this movie, because I thought the movie's okay. It was kind of It's just like, it's one of those movies where it's about basketball and there's no basketball being played, and there's like two instances where you're watching people talk in rooms, and there's TVs with college basketball playing, but it's NBA lockout, so there's no NBA playing, and it's just about like, how can we get the Players Association to agree with the owners and make sure the money works, and like a lockout. The last NBA lockout was 2011, so this is 8 years after that, and it's not based off of that or anything, and the current NBA has like a 9-year deal, so thankfully no NBA lockout is in the near future. But in this movie, you have two side characters, Bill Duke, who's the great director of Deep Cover and was in the Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He is a youth basketball coach in this, and because there's a lockout, he kind of has like a showdown with two NBA players where they play at his court. And then your guy, Kyle MacLachlan, he plays the NBA commissioner. So kind of like Adam Silver. And he's only like 3 or 4 scenes, but he's actually really good. And because he's basically just in a suit, and he's just got the silver fox hair, and he's got all the suave, and he has like conversations about, negotiations, which I found interesting. And then the movie, towards the end, there's a scene where the main guy, the main agent guy, is like in a sauna, and then all of a sudden Kyle MacLachlan goes in the sauna with his shirt off and a towel, and it's like old man talk, and it was pretty funny.
That's like,
and they kind of like negotiate in the sauna for a little bit.
That's like, I guarantee you, not that I'm on this side of TikTok, I swear, but that type of scene would be like immediate like gold mine footage for like a thirst edit of Kyle MacLachlan.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like TikTok would have a field day.
I mean, Kyle MacLachlan though, like as a person, is really, really funny because he's like very in the know on his pop culture, and whoever does his like PR or who helps him run his social media accounts, he's like constantly posting like meme worthy stuff. Like he was just in a hot dog costume like last week, lip syncing to Chapel Roan. Like he knows what he's doing. He stays relevant. I love him.
Okay, so I would have 11 basketball beating High Flying Bird. So the next matchup is Just Right and Annie O. I would say, so Annie O is another TV movie, so it's going to lose here because it's just lower production. No one's really in it. It's from 1996, and it's about a 15-year-old female basketball player who joins the high school men's team. And one of her teammates is her boyfriend, and her brother is another teammate. This was okay, but again, it's like just low budget, and nothing really stood out. Like you wouldn't know anybody who's in it. So it's definitely better than O, just because O was just so like sad and unwatchable and just ridiculous. Anio was just like a basic movie about basketball, which, was fine. Okay, so now we will talk about... So we kind of talked about Basketball Diaries beating Harvard Man, but it's not going to beat Uncut Gems. So I know Uncut Gems isn't totally about basketball, and I'll talk about more of that later, but it is better than Basketball Diaries. So that one was kind of easy to just...
I also think basketball is kind of like a key plot device, and the outcome of a basketball game is a key plot device in Uncut Gems. So whatever, screen time it might be lacking in, it makes up for in like the importance of the actual
The whole end of
story.
the movie is based on that.
Exactly.
Okay, so the last second round matchup is Hoosiers versus Heaven is a Playground. And this one's tough because, like I said, Hoosiers was kind of boring on rewatch. But I would say it's probably the better movie than Heaven is a Playground, although I probably would rather rewatch Heaven is a Playground before Hoosiers. But I think just from the Gene Hackman of it all and the cinematic aspects of Hoosiers, I'm going to have it advance one more time. But for Heaven is a Playground, this is from 1991. This one was interesting because they basically got the 8th pick in the 1990 draft, Bob Kimball, to act in this movie and kind of be the star. This is like right before Michael Jordan became more of a thing. Like Michael Jordan was already in the NBA, but this is before he was in Space Jam. And so like Bob Kimball was trying to be like a Hollywood star, NBA star, and that was kind of becoming a thing a lot of people were doing. He wasn't that bad at acting. He was actually pretty good. The story is about like this coach in Chicago who runs this pro-am league, is trying to get kids scholarships to college. And then he has a few like NBA players come to play at the Blacktop outside, and Akeem Olajuwon, the Rockets player from 1991 before he won the titles in the 94-95, he's in this movie, and he has like a few lines, and he's just like this 7-foot Goliath-like figure, and he blocks a shot, and he like has like some trash talk, so he's pretty funny, and I would rewatch it. And like I said, Hoosiers, which is going to lose to Uncut Gems, I'm just going to say it now, in the next round. So with Hoosiers, it's Gene Hackman. It's from 1986. I forgot Barbara Hershey was kind of like the female lead, and Dennis Hopper is in it, which she was also in Blue Velvet in 1986. But yeah, it's like Gene Hackman goes to this small town in Indiana in the 50s, and he coaches this high school team, and he just is like very overtly like mean, and like there's only 5 players, and one of them fouls out, and he like only keeps 4 players on the team, or there's like one extra guy he just doesn't put in, and then he like forcibly gets thrown out of games, but the team ultimately wins. But there's just like multiple scenes where he's out in an open field talking to Barbara Hershey about stuff that doesn't matter, and then there's like multiple scenes where he's inside talking to like 20 old white guys, either at the barbershop or at like some other places where they're just talking about the team. But it's like the stakes are so low, and none of the like high school boys basketball players ever acted in any of their stuff really that matter. And I forgot exactly what Dennis Hopper's character does, but he's not in it that much. And yeah, I'd much rather watch Uncut Gems. So Hoosiers is out in the second or in the third round, and depending on other placement, I could have bumped it out earlier. So the final matchup in the third round is Love and Basketball versus Just Wright. So Just Wright will lose with Queen Latifah, but I will talk about it. That means the final in this region is Love and Basketball versus Uncut Gems, which we will get to soon. But first, Queen Latifah and Common will have a rom-com with a basketball. This one surprised me a little bit because as I was watching it, at first I was like, okay, this is going to be bad. It's a 3.0 in Letterboxd. I gave it 3.5. It's by this director who didn't really do much of anything else.
Yeah, it's like female-directed rom-com, Queen Latifah, 2010, like
she's a producer. And yeah, Common is the lead. Common plays... There's like some interesting little tidbits about this movie, which I thought deserved a 3.5 and deserved to win a few rounds here and pretty much be the top 3 movie of this episode. The writer of this movie is Michael Elliott. He also wrote Like Mike, which we talked about in the cultural iconic region in the last episode. But yeah, Common plays a New Jersey net. This is 2010. This is right before they moved to Brooklyn. But basically he's been in the NBA for like 10 or 11 years. He's never won the title, but he's won an MVP. He's like an all-star, but the meet cute with Queen Latifah doesn't make sense because Queen Latifah is like a physical therapist, and she goes to the Nets games, and it's very reminiscent of Eddie 1996 with Whoopi Goldberg, where she's at the Knicks game shouting with her jersey on, and Queen Latifah is shouting. She has a god sister, so it's not even her real sister, played by Paula Patton, and Paula Patton's like a self-declared gold digger. She only wants to marry rich basketball players for their money, and so they go to the game. They're unable to get the hook up to the party, and Queen Latifah drives away, and they go to the gas station. It's just Queen Latifah at the gas station, and Common comes up in his car, and he doesn't even know where his gas fuel tank valve opening is, so he's on the wrong side of that. And he's on the phone, and he's talking about how he has to do something for charity, and Queen Latifah walks up, and no one else is anywhere near this gas station. It's just them two in a 100-yard radius. And they're talking, and she's like, you put the gas over there, you might want to turn your car, and she's got the jersey on, so he knows that she's a Nets fan. And then she sees that he has like this Joni Mitchell jazz CD in his car, and so they talk about that, and Common invites her to their party. But then Paula Patton like snags him away, and Queen Latifah doesn't get him. But then a few months later, he like gets engaged with Paula Patton, but then he immediately hurts his knee in the NBA All-Star game, and like the actual injury that he has is like a torn PCL, which sometimes is like 2 or 3 months, but sometimes can be like 6 or 9 months. So like they make a huge deal for the rest of the movie about Common's character trying to come back for the playoffs in like 2 or 3 months, and nobody is able to help him, and he's trying to find the best physical therapist, and his fiance Paula Patton says, well, you can have my god sister Queen Latifah as your physical therapist. So that becomes the way their relationship gets rekindled. But in real life, like even if you broke your ACL, if you're an 11-year-old veteran in the All-Star game, you're going to be an NBA player the next year at the worst. But they made it sound like if he can't come back in the next 2 months, he's not even going to be in the NBA next season, which is completely ridiculous. But another few things about this movie, they have Dwight Howard and the Orlando Magic, like they use actual NBA logos and everything. So it's the New Jersey Nets versus the Orlando Magic. And Dwight Howard even has a scene where he comes over to Common's house where he's injured on the couch, and they have a funny moment. And the final part of the movie is like the other part of this is like he comes back Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Miami Heat and Dwayne Wade. So basically he misses the entire playoffs until the very last game, which would put them in the NBA Finals, and he plays and they win. But they got Dwayne Wade actually playing basketball and then acting a little bit, which is kind of what some of these movies do, but it was also nice to see them play basketball. But yeah, I thought it's definitely rewatchable, and even though some of the editing and some of like the music choices weren't great, I thought it was above average. So now we have the final of the drama region. We have Love and Basketball from 2000 versus Uncut Gems from 2019. We have both seen these movies.
This is difficult.
We kind of talked about Uncut Gems a little bit on the A24 draft.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything about Uncut Gems you'd like to discuss?
I think the main thing that's worth noting about Uncut Gems, like if you haven't seen it already, you should. From like a non-basketball mega fans perspective, like as a movie, it is a must-watch movie for most. Like I would recommend most people see this movie because it's that good.
Yeah, 2019 is considered one of the better movie years of recent years, and Uncut Gems is definitely top 5, top 10 of
for
that
sure.
year with Parasite and a lot of other good movies. But
it's just so good, and it's we recently talked about the movie Good Time that's directed by the Safdie brothers. This is another Safdie brothers movie. So I definitely think in the next 10, 15 years, they're going to be like a big name in like movie directing. And we'll look back on Uncut Gems and Good Time and be like, oh, those are their early films. But they just know how to build suspense. They know how to like really give you anxiety while you watch something. I think that's what most people say about Uncut Gems, is that it's just a very anxiety-inducing movie, and it is.
And the story progresses really well, just like Good Time.
Yeah.
Or like everything that happens is kind of like, it makes sense a lot of what's happening. Like it's easy to digest.
Yeah, and I think the other thing worth noting, not that anybody didn't already know this, but like this was some of Adam Sandler's like foray into like not comedy. And I respect that because I think he's probably one of the best actors to have a very successful comedy career and have a very successful drama career. Like one could argue that maybe Jim Carrey did a similar thing, but I would disagree because he has less like banger drama hits than Adam Sandler has more banger drama.
Yeah, this and Punch Drunk Love are really
top 2.
Yeah, and even Hustle, which is the movie it faced in the first round, which you haven't seen, that's also a good drama role for him.
Yeah, I really like Uncut Gems. For me, it's a 4 out of 5. If I rewatched it, maybe it would be higher. But that's why it's kind of difficult to match this up against Love and Basketball, because I think I rated this a 4.5. So
yeah, Love and Basketball wins, I think.
In technicality,
it's more about basketball.
I also think it's
and love.
It's slightly better than Uncut Gems, and I just gassed up Uncut Gems so hard. But Love and Basketball was one of those movies that like we put it on because, well, first of all, it's a Criterion, which if that tells you anything, you're like, okay, this should be halfway decent if it's a Criterion movie. But like, I think the thing that I really liked about it was just how surprisingly romantic it was. It was very romance-centric, like extremely. While at the same time, you know, being a basketball movie, like it has enough basketball to be a really good basketball movie, but like it's just like the perfect date night movie. There's something for the boys, there's something for the girls, there's some really good music. Like, it's just really good. I was almost crying by the end of it. I liked it so much.
Yeah, it's definitely like, it's like almost universally a good movie. Like, I don't know how you could watch Love and Basketball and be like, this isn't good. Just like how it's made, the acting, the performances, the chemistry between the leads, the romantic parts. Like, they have actual like sensual sex scenes where it's not about the nudity or like the actual sex. It's about like the relationship, which most movies don't do at all. But for a basketball movie to have this was like incredible. Yeah, I might be wrong about this, but I think it's one of 3 of these 68 movies we will end up talking about in total. It's one of 3 that's in the Criterion Collection with Uncut Gems. So this is kind of like one of the bigger matchups. And then the other movie we'll talk about in a different episode. But yeah, I would argue Uncut Gems, like if we're just talking about movie only in rewatchability, I could see myself saying Uncut Gems is better than Love and Basketball, but I think in context of this discussion, I have to say Love and Basketball advances. And for one, because we both liked it, but we both obviously, we gave it 4.5, like we said, and when you watch a movie on the first try, you give it 4.5 or 5 stars. It's like
it's a banger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can definitely envision myself rewatching Love and Basketball many, many more times.
Oh, for sure.
It's when I started this exercise, it was probably at the top of my list of movies I thought would be really good. Like He Got Game, Above the Rim, Love and Basketball. Like, some of these I thought would be really good, and as of right now, Love and Basketball is probably the best one I've seen. But I still have a few more to watch. So yeah, what else would you say about Love and Basketball?
I mean, I'm a romance girly. I'm all about the romance, but like the thing with this movie is that it's substantial. Like, it has substance to the story that is like not just cheesy cliche romance. Like, it has like character development. Like, these people, like, they start out as children and they meet each other.
Yeah, I love the staging of the life timeline.
I love that. Like, I love just like childhood friends that, like, I like that trope as a romance trope, but you also have to think of it in terms of like how they make it convincing in a movie. Like, you can read about that any old day and it'll be a great romance book, but like, I feel like with this, they did a very good job, especially with, you know, switching out the children actors into the adult actors and then like making them look slightly older. Like, the continuity that carried through with, oh, that's the same person. Oh, that's the same guy that still, or that's the same girl that she wants to do this. And like, it's very easy to follow that character's desires from when they were a child into their adulthood. And like, you know so much about them before they're even adults. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
you learn little things that you'll pick up later in the film.
Yeah. Yeah. It like is really good character development for basically a basketball romance movie.
Yes, Sana Lathan playing Monica Wright and Omar Epps playing Quincy. Yeah, Gina Prince Bythewood also did like The Woman King and some other movies. This was her first movie, and the Blake Check podcast did an episode about this one, and they mentioned how she really wanted a basketball playing actress instead of just an actress, and so Sanaa Lathan had to like learn how to play basketball. But anyway, yeah, I really liked it, and I think it's going to advance to the Final Four. So in the drama region, we have 11 Basketball beating Uncut Gems in the final, and it will join the 1992 film White Men Can't Jump in the Final Four, where we have 2 slots remaining. That means we have 2 more episodes to do, which I will hopefully record in the next few weeks at the latest. So thanks for listening.
Bye.